What is up, everybody? We are back here on Roundtable Wrestling Radio for Thursday night, June 28, 2012. It is my privilege and honor to welcome one of the original Gangsters, original member of the ECW roster, and, of course, part of Extreme Rising this weekend, the one, the only, New Jack. Sir, thank you so much for joining us this evening.
What's going on, man?
How you doing, sir? It has been...
I'm good.
Yes.
Great to have you on.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
Yes, of course, this weekend, tomorrow and Saturday, the big Extreme Reunion shows. You're a big part of that, obviously, a big part of the original ECW. We had Shane Douglas this past Monday talking about it.
Right.
How do you feel about the shows, and are you ready for the action this weekend?
Well, I'll be doing the one Saturday in Philly. I'm not doing the one in New York.
Oh, okay.
And
Philly.
Yeah, I'm just doing Philly.
Oh, okay.
I have had too many issues. I've had too many issues in some states, and it's just some of them I just refuse to go back to and wrestle, and New York happens to be one of them. You know, I won't go there. I'm just like, the hell with them, so I'm not going.
Well, that's a shame because we're from New York, so.
Yeah, well, you're bad, but anyway, no, I'm just kidding. But no, we should have a good time. You know what I mean? Mustafa doing fine. You know what I mean? I talked to him on the phone today earlier.
Yeah.
And
he actually
was
called
like,
into the show a few years ago. Awesome dude, obviously, and so it's really, really. So you guys going to be together on Saturday as a tag team?
Right. Yeah. I mean, the Gangsters. I mean, for real, we are really the only surviving tag team that's left from back then. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And we get together on some occasions, but I mean, we're the only remaining team out of everybody that's still a part of each other. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And my thing is, I agreed to come back, and mostly help these younger guys. You know what I'm saying? Because a lot of them are so misdirected, and they don't have a clue as to where they're going and what they want to do, and just trying to develop, characters and personalities and everything like that. And that's what, my role has been more behind the curtain, trying to help these guys than anything else. And, to see them come up and, branch out and go to greener pastures, then, I think that's my give back to what I did. You know what I mean? Because I had people that reached and took me by the hand, like Ricky Moore and Robert Gibson, Tracy Smothers, Ray Candy. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So, this is me. I'm being the Ray Candy and the Ricky and Robert back to these kids that's trying to come up now,
And I see you always have, like, on these shoot interviews, you always have, like, a good relationship with Jim Cornette. Is that one of the other guys that kind of, because you obviously wrestled for his organization for a while. Are you guys, is that one of the guys that you, say that helped you out throughout your career, Jim Cornette? I
mean, on a personal level, I got to a point where I didn't like Cornette. But, he, and I've always given him credit, he came up with, he helped me when we was talking about, forming a tag team. He said, and his exact words were, he said, Jack, I want a black tag team to come to Smoky Mountain. He said, do you have a partner? And at the time, I didn't. And I said, me and Mustafa had been talking about tagging. And he said, well, I want to see y'all work together, because he happened to see us on TV in Atlanta when we was coming on like 4 o'clock a.m. And he said he had just came back in, and he was at the hotel, and he saw the show that we were working on, which was North Georgia Wrestling, and he saw it. He saw me, and then he was like, I want you, if you come up with a partner. So me and Mustafa, we decided that, we would tag and whatever. So when we worked the show with Cornette the next time, then on his way home, he said, Jack, we need a name for y'all. You know what I mean? And I said, I had tossed around a bunch of names, and he had tossed around a bunch of names. So we narrowed it down, and he was on the phone, and he said, what about the Gangsters. T-H-E, Gangsters.
Right.
And I said, what about the D-A, Gangsters? A-S at the end. Take off the E-R. And he was like, I like it. So that's how the Gangsters born over a fucking phone call. It's like when D-Ron, not D-Ron, I'm sorry, but when D-Lo got his name. And
right.
Cornette called me one day. He said, Jack, I think I got his name for AC. And I said, what? He said, because the thing was for him, he would always, we came out way before the Nation of Domination doing this thing with the Gangsters, and we had like 5 or 6 people come out to the ring with us. Well, that's where, Vince stole the idea from the Nation when he, put them together. It came from the Gangsters. But he was like, he said, we can get a new crew. He said, but I don't trust New Jack. He said, that guy might go off the bat at any given moment. He said, I don't trust him, and he's liability, in other words. So they brought up D-Lo, and we had already went to Smoky Mountains. But Cornette was like, before we went, he was like, well, we got to think of a name. He said, because every time we go to a town, and we went to a town like one time, like way up in the mountains of Kentucky, and the only black person that was in that town was some nigga that had drive through a Kentucky Fried Chicken. You know what I mean? There wasn't nobody else black, nowhere to be found for miles. And I'm sitting there like, okay, Jim, where am I going to go out here looking for black people at? You know what I mean? You go try to bail a few of them out of jail. I'm like, where am I going to find them? So then I said, why don't you just let D-Lo, at the time, it was AC Combs, I said, why don't you let him be one of our security guys? So he's like, all right, well, he said, you sure? He said, do you like him? I said, no, I don't. Ain't that I like him. I said, I barely even know the cat. I said, but he's high yellow, but he's black. So he was like, okay, well, we'll use him. He said, so you cool with it? I said, yeah, but he kind of take off that funky outfit he had on, because he had on a one-piece singlet and some gold Shawn Michaels high long wristbands, and I'm like, bro, that ain't gonna fly. That you got to change clothes. I'm like, that is not gonna work. So he put him on with us, and then that night again he called me. He said, Jack, I thought of him, and I said, what? He says, what about Downtown D-Lo Brown? And it was quiet on the phone for about 10 seconds, and Jim was inhaling a bunch of air, and he blurted out this laugh that went on for about 5 minutes. And before to God, I really believe he had literally fell over wherever he was laughing. And I was like, oh, my God. And I said, dude, that's his name. It ain't mine. I'm like, but if he want to be called Downtown D-Lo Brown, then God bless him. So they ended up dropping the downtown part, but that's where his name came from.
Right.
You know what I mean? So I was like, okay, if you cool with it, I'm cool with it. But then, I started to hear stuff, and then I heard Cornette one time call one of the security guys a nigga, and that was the night that Mustafa had quit, and I quit, I think, the next week because I had to go back and get my check. And I was like, hey, bro, I've had enough of this shit. And I went on, and I had to talk to Todd Gordon because, the whole reasoning for us to even reach out to ECW was Al Snow said, Jack, y'all need to be in ECW. And at the time, I was like, where is that? Who is that? He was trying to explain the whole ECW thing to me. He's like, dude, he said, y'all will be at home there. You know what I mean? He said, because of the style that y'all do, he said, y'all brawl and wrestle a little bit. And that's why I laugh a lot of times. People say, oh, New Jack can't wrestle. I will wrestle rings around somebody. I was just like, they wanted me to brawl. They wanted us to do street fights. And at the end of my run in Smoky Mountain, then, we started doing street fights. So when we went over to ECW, and it continued. And then one night, Paul Lee came up with the bright idea. He said, just do a street fight. And we did it. And the next show, I said, well, can you keep our music playing through the whole match? He said, why? I said, because we just went in this street fight. I said, the only thing was missing was music like on TV.
Right.
I said, so can you play our music through the whole match? And it'll be like a 10, 15-minute long street fight with music in the background. I'm like, it'll be different, never been done before, but I think it would fit. So we did it again. And then he came back. He said, Jack, let's do this every show. I said, man, I'm tired. And he was like, no. He said, Jack, we could do it. This could be y'all every show. So we was basically doing a dance every night for the next 5 years. And it was no break, no rest, no nothing. And then once we started, I pissed Paulie off about somebody, I forgot which one of them it was. But he was mad at me about something, so then we was doing jobs every night, for about 2 months. And that was the night I started diving off of stuff. And I told Mustafa, I said, they're not going to remember the finish to the match. I said, because I'm going to dive. And I said, he said, dive on what? I said, something in here I could find that's high. I'm going to dive off of it. And once I started doing it, they didn't care who won, who went over. They nobody cared. They just wanted to see me dive. So it was to a point when I knew that it was over, then he started asking me to do it. I said, so, now you need me to do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So now let's talk about a little bit more money, okay? And so that's when we incorporated the diving into it with some more money being put in my pocket.
Are you sick of the song now? Or is that something that you've gotten tired of that particular song?
Natural Born Killers?
Yeah.
No, I do. You know what? When you Google that song, it comes up sometimes as Natural Born Killers performed by Dr. Dre and Ice Cube, New Jack, or the Gangsters theme music.
Yeah, it does.
Okay, now I'm sure you're familiar with Bootsy Collins. He redid, he did a song for me, my own personal ring intro, and I used it when I was out in XPW. You know what I mean? And it was all me, because people was always trying to figure out a way to chant New Jack. You know what I'm saying? And that was something that I was trying to, and I told them, stop. I said, I hope that, don't let that bother you, that they're chanting my name and not yours. I'm like, but you're still getting paid just like I am, so just go along with it. You know what I mean? And then we got to a point where me and him weren't on the same page anymore, and one night Ricky Morton came up to me. He said, Jack, I'm going to say something to you, and I'm not trying to piss you off. He said, but I got one question. I said, what? He said, why can't black people do business together? And I said, you know what? I said, that's true. I said, black people would rather just take a loss and lose the company than to share the money with somebody else. You know what I mean?
Right.
And Ricky said, Jack, for real? He said, me and Robert can't stand each other. He said, but wouldn't one of us be worth $5 without the other?
Right.
And that's what Ricky told me. You know what I mean? And I told Mustafa that, but it was too late because the damage had been done, and it was no, you couldn't repair that dent because it was too deep in there. You know what I mean? And it took us almost 10 years, I think. Almost 5 or 6 years to get back in the ring, and that was, but he convinced me to do the match against Mustafa. Now, going back, and I'll finish that story, with Cornette, when we left, I was doing promos about him, and I was talking about how racist he was, and this, that, and the other, and yada, 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 whatever. And he was talking about me, too, you know what I mean? And we were both going at each other bad, you know what I mean? And then it just got to a point, I'm like, okay, man, enough's enough. You done beat that dead horse to death, so just let it go. So we just haven't, and I never saw him anymore after that until this convention. And he was in the room doing this shoot, what you call you shoot. He was doing that, and somebody said, Jim Cornette's in there right now. Y'all got to be quiet walking down the hall. And I just went right up to the door and started banging on the door. Yeah. And they was in the middle of the shoot interview, and I walked in, and Cornette had a look on his eye like, oh, God, these niggas is going to kill me, I know it. And I walked in, and I started walking up towards him, and then I just started laughing. I was like, why can't we be friends? Why can't we be friends? And he started laughing, and we, like, man, look, man, let bygones be bygones. I'm like, we in this stuff to make money, and to take care of whoever we take care of, and that's that. You know what I mean? Exactly. So just, I'm like, dude, I don't have the strength in me to be pissed off at nobody anymore. I'm like, it don't mean, I said, it means nothing. So he's like, are we cool now? I was like, yeah, dude, we straight. And he's like, okay, now I can let my butthole loose And we just all started laughing, you know what I mean? And so at that point, I mean, well, you know what, we could have walked out of the room, he might have said something bad about us, but I mean, on the record, we squashed it whenever that convention was.
Oh,
and
no, absolutely.
Been, you know, I haven't talked to him or anything since then, but, you know, all is well and water under the bridge and life goes on.
Oh, absolutely, man. I mean, also I wanted to know, you know, we spoke to Shane about, you know, the CCW thing, and obviously, it still carries on after all these years. I mean, you guys left a mark like nobody's business. You know, TNA did it. You, of course, what did you think of that show, the Hardcore Justice show that TNA did to kind of revive ECW or maybe squeeze the tit a little bit of ECW?
You know what it did to me? Honestly, on a personal note, I said if I had to go out, that's how I would want to go out.
Wow.
And the way that they put me over, I'm like, if that's the last thing fans that paid for that show remember me as, that's the way I wanted to go out. And that's why if you go back, there's a bunch of pictures, or if you go on my Facebook wall, in my picture, you'll see somebody did almost a snap-by-snap shot of our match. And then when the show was over, we was in the ring, and Dixie Carter was just had her arm around my neck and rubbing my head and the side of my face. And I was involved with Terry Reynolds at the time, and Terry was like, "Babe, if I didn't know any better, I would think she was trying to hit on you." And I was like, well, I said, she rubbed me long enough, something was about to erupt. And we started laughing, right? But I thanked her, you know what I'm saying? I was like, hey, it is what it is, you know what I mean? And she did.
Is that the best looking promoter you ever worked for, Dixie?
That's the only, well, there was one other female, but she was, low budget rent on the indie circuit. But Dixie, to answer your question, yes. She was cool as hell with me. You know what I mean?
Nice.
And it was just funny because I had gotten myself back in shape and I had dropped all this weight and my belly was back flat and and everything was where it was supposed to be. And she told me at least 15 times a night. She says, "You look so good." And I was like, and that first time she said it, I was like, "Oh, thank you, Dixie." And after about the 5th or 6th time, I was like, "Okay, Dixie." And then number 10, I'm like, "All right, Dixie." And it was cool, man, and we had a good time, you know what I'm saying?
That's good. I mean, what
I told her.
What do you think about the fans that were like, why did you guys hug in the ring? Like that kind of, you guys were brawling and then all of a sudden you started hugging. Like, what did you make of that? Like,
well, you know what? Nobody agreed to that.
Really?
Okay. Nobody. Well, Bubba kind of said that's what we was gonna do,
right.
And because he had some, enough pools in the company where that's how. I didn't agree. Mustafa and Devon didn't agree. Balls and Axel didn't agree.
Right.
But either do it or not get paid. So we had, well, and honestly, some people were like, they were pointing stuff out, and they were like, "New Jack, you were standing beside Devon. Why did you throw up the X and not hold his hand like everybody else did?" And I didn't think nobody caught on to it. But I had already said that I wasn't going to do it. So if you go back and see that picture, you will see where everybody is got each other's hand except for me.
Right.
I was holding up the X. I was like, I'm not doing it. You know what I mean? And because honestly, I thought that ending was corny.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Yeah. It was just, people were like, okay, because
y'all were kind of like fucking each other up, and then all of a sudden, you're hugging. You know what I mean? Like, so it's
then all of a sudden, the room lit up, and you heard that noise like, oh! And then we ran and embraced each other like we were gay. I'm like, dude, I said, this is retarded. You know what I mean?
It's like the ending of Full House or something. You all make up.
Right. And I mean, my thing was, I said, let Axel and Bones go out there and do their thing, and then, at some point, what Bubba and D1 might be getting up on them and killing them, whatever, then hit our music, and then it turns into a three-way, and then, you know, two people might get tossed out, and then the finish is hit, whatever, you know what I'm saying? And I said, but then they was like, you know, so people was bitching about who didn't want to take the lay down for the other person, and I was like, are y'all serious? You know, I'm like, dude, so it came out to be like one of the gayest endings in the history of wrestling. But I was like, hey, I got paid, so the hell with them. But with what they told me to do or wanted me to do, basically, I was like, if this is what people gonna remember me from my last appearance on TV, then this is the way I want to go out. And I personally called Dixie a couple of days later and thanked her for allowing me to go out like that. You know what I mean? Wow. I said, so if I don't ever come back here and work again, I said, thank you.
So obviously,
and that was just kind of closure.
Yeah, so obviously they did right by you.
Well, at the end, with the little part we did in the match, that was okay.
Yeah.
But I didn't agree with the finish. I just thought it was homo. I didn't agree with it.
and obviously what was missing too was the theme song, like the real, you know, the Dr. Dre song.
Well, see, the thing was they had to get as close to it as they could.
Yeah.
Or contact the record company or whoever owns that song and pay them all these hundreds of thousands of dollars to use that song. So they said, well, we'll just make y'all a song, and we'll keep the beginning as close to like the missile dropping as we can, and y'all just go out there and do it, and the fans will get over it. So that's what happened. You know what I mean? Because Paulie was at the point where he was being notified before the company closed, right when we were getting ready to close, that we could not use that song on TV.
Right.
Okay, so it was becoming, the song was, you know, the song actually helped us get over, but then the song also came back and bit us because it was like, we can't, we to the point now where the record companies were saying, you know, y'all got to either pay us or not use our music.
It's kind of like what happened with Sandman. The Sandman pretty much had the same situation. His song was, or his entrance was like almost as popular as he was. You know, so when it wasn't used, like in WWE, it was something was missing. You know what I mean?
Everyone was like, what hell music is this?
Yeah, and I mean, like a lot of guys, you know, they couldn't use their names because Vince owns their name. So, you know, like Justin had to go by something else, and somebody else had to be called something else, and the Dudleys had to be called something 2000, some guard 3000, something stupid. And I mean, it was just like, are you serious? You know what I mean? And I'm like, well, and the funny thing about it was when I got offered to go to WWE, one of the agreements on the contract was if you are fired or quit or die or whatever and you're no longer working for the company, your name stays here. And I was like, no, I can't agree to that.
Right.
I said, because, see, if I wanted to go out on the indie circuit or if I wanted to go and do something else that's involved in TV entertainment, who's going to pay to see Jerome Young?
Right.
Nobody. So don't nobody know who he is. But who's going to pay to see New Jack?
Right.
You see what I'm saying? Yeah. So I was like, you know, there is a life after wrestling, and I'm not giving y'all my name. So if that's where we stuck at, then that's where we'll be stuck at. You know what I mean?
What did you
so
think
that's why it was like.
What did you think of the entire show, though? Like, I know, like, your part was awesome with the Dudleys and Balls and Axel, but the entire show, like, did you even watch the entire show? Were you happy with it? Like, did you think TNA did right by ECW that night?
Do you want to be honest?
Yeah, of course.
I'll be totally honest with you. During the show, and this is the honest to God's truth, and if somebody get mad about it, then tell them to go to hell. But during the show, me and Terry were sitting in the back in a corner talking about stuff that wasn't even pertaining to the show.
Right.
The whole entire show until we was getting ready to go and do my match.
Okay.
I couldn't tell you what happened. I wasn't in Gorilla. I wasn't looking at the monitor. I wasn't watching the show. I didn't watch it. I swear to God. because she came to the show with me, and she was in the back with me, and we found a corner, and we were sitting over there talking about stuff that we was going to be doing the next week or going somewhere or whatever, and I didn't watch one match. I swear to God.
Did you get feedback from people about that show? Did people tell you a lot about it, how they felt about it, that it meant something to them?
They said a lot of people. The only negative thing I got out of it was two things I got out of it. And one of them I started laughing. Somebody said they didn't like our finish. Yeah. And they said, New Jack, y'all should have. That was like the finish was just garbage. I'm like, I know. It's like y'all been battling for all these years, and at the end y'all hug each other and kiss. I'm like, dude, like Jesus Christ. And they said another thing I didn't like, that they didn't let you dive. I said, do you realize every time I dove on top of somebody that shit hurts?
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm flying through the air at 80 miles an hour and hit the ground. I said, that hurt. And I said, it wasn't a matter of them not letting me die. I told them I wasn't diving.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Did they ask
I said, I've been doing that for years. I said, and every time I dove, bro, it hurt.
Did they ask you that night to do that?
Oh, no, Dixie came up to me and she says, we figured out what we want you to do. We just want you to run in, clean house, and that's it. And at the time, they either hadn't settled on a finish yet, or she was jerking my chain to give it to me in sections. But she told me, she said, well, no, you're going to hit the ring, clear the ring, but they're going to come back with some other stuff. And then from there, I think she went and tagged Bubba, and then he came in the room and laid the finish on me. And I was like, phew. And he said, Jack, and it's going to be us and y'all in the ring, and you don't have to die.
Right.
Okay. And then they did say this, and I knew it was an imaginary finger pointing at me. They said, unless you're told to go in the audience, if you go in the audience, you will not be getting paid. And I swear to God, when he said that, I felt like there was a neon arrow over my head, pointing down in my head, just flashing. And I was like, why everybody looking at me? You know what I mean? And they started laughing. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I didn't care if they would have asked me to dive. I still wouldn't have done it.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because bro, I put my body through so much. It's like sometime now I might have to have help getting out the bed.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's like I got to a point where I'm like, trying to make me dive now is like trying to throw a cat in a swimming pool. You will get scratched and clawed up. I ain't diving down on this girl at that last Extreme Rising show. She said, New Jack, are you gonna dive? I said, when? She said, tonight. I said, yeah. She said, oh my God, I can't wait. I said, no, I'll do it for you right now. I said, I want you to, get your camera. So she took her camera. I said, put it on record. And she was like, what are you going to do? I said, are you recording me? Do you have? She said, yeah. I stood up in a chair and jumped off and just stepped right down. I said, that was my last dive. You can officially say you have it on video. And she was like, are you serious? I said, I tell you what, you take your ass up there and dive, and let me say, until you tell me how I feel when you hit the ground. And she said, well, I never thought about it like that, but you always, I said, because I always got paid for it. I said, but that hurt.
Yeah.
You know,
one of the
I mean, dude, I knocked out. I broke stuff. I cracked my skull. I lost vision.
What about the one with Vic Grimes? I mean, that was fucking sick. I mean, I've seen you dive a lot of times, but that one was wow.
You mean when I threw him?
Yeah, I mean when you guys, yeah, and then he landed on you. I think it was. It looked like. I mean, I don't know how the hell.
That's the one. That was the one that when Vic landed on me. Yeah. That changed my life for the rest of my life because.
Did that make you rethink things?
I woke. Huh?
Did that make you rethink things about doing that?
Yeah, revenge. It made me think revenge, and that's why when we did the free fall in L.A., when Vic had this bright idea of him getting thrown through, me pushing him off and him falling through 12 tables, I had something else in my mind. You know, there was like an imaginary X on the ground past the ring, and I was trying to throw him through it. But unfortunately, he just came up a little short and hit the rope. But no, I knew he wasn't going to hit them tables because I've actually, I was like, I thought through him. You know, and that was because I wasn't comfortable with doing that spot in the first place with him in Danbury, Connecticut. And he was like, Jack, if we do 2 tables, then, you know, and I said, Vic, you're thinking on paper, like, you know, X times X equals squared, whatever. I said, now, on paper, you can draw this up, okay? I said, but when it's actually done, the end result is not going to be the same as what you're thinking. Right. You know what I'm saying? I said, so here we go. What was supposed to happen, we were supposed to both fall through the table, and we both get carried out of the arena, okay, out of the building. But when we got up top, and then I asked Vic before, I said, did you go up there and check? Because I showed up a little late because it was snowing and, you know, traffic slowed down, so I didn't get in there. By the time I got there, the fans was already inside. I said, did you go out there and check to see if that little thing is 30 to hold both of us? And he's like, yeah, Jack, it's 30, it's 30. And I'm like, all right. So the finish is we both go up there and we take the double bump through the table, and we're done. And he's like, okay, got it. Everything's fine. So when I got up there, and I started climbing up this little rickety thing, and it was shaking. And when I realized that when I got to the top, it was about a 6-inch wide beam going across that whatever that thing was, and that was it. And when Vic came up, and honestly, I didn't trust myself up there trying to balance, so I crawled across the thing. So when Vic came up, I grabbed him. I said, did you come up here and check this thing? Now, we having this conversation on pay-per-view. He said, Jack, I'm sorry, man, but I didn't get to come up here, man. And he said, Jack, that's too far to fall, man. I'm scared. I said, Vic, we are on pay-per-view. I said, on 3. And he's like, Jack, I can't do it. And I said, 3. And I jumped back and I pulled him down on top of me. Well, when I hit that first table, it broke my fall, which he did this retarded somersault, which made him catch up with me, and he was upside down. His back was pressed against my shoulder and my head, and it drove my head into the floor, and I heard this loud crack, and then I tasted something salty, nasty in my mouth, and there was some fluid coming out of my ears.
Oh, wow.
And I had cracked my skull, and I was in the hospital for like a month, and once I started to come around where I could make sense, they found out they didn't realize that I had lost my sight, and neither did I.
Damn.
Okay. And when I was able to communicate with the doctor, and I was like, why is it so dark in here? And that's when I realized that I was blind, and I was totally blind for about 4 months because I had optic nerve damage, and then it started to come back around month number 5 or whatever, number 6. And then I started to make stuff out. But in one of my eyes, my vision is still, like, really, really bad. You know what I mean?
Right.
So, and I still came back, and I still went back to diving again like an idiot. You know, and they had already told me, they said, if you hit your head in that same spot again, they said chances are you will either be not able to walk or you'll die.
Right.
You know, so that's why I started telling people, you know, don't hit me in my head. If you hit me in my head, I'm going to kill your ass. You know what I mean? So nobody would hit me in my head. And then until one indie show a couple of years ago, this kid picked up this trash can lid and hit me in the head, and I just took a razor and just cut him right in the face. I'm like, nah, I'll teach you.
Were you upset at Grimes, though? Like, or do you think it was, like, something?
You know what? Honestly, I wasn't mad because of what happened to me in the end.
Right.
What made me pissed off was he started to take credit for me getting hurt. Like he started, look, I put New Jack out the business, kind of stuff. And then he started coming to the ring mocking me. You know, he wear a bandana, and I mean, you know, Vic Grimes is an idiot. He's a big dumb idiot. You know what I mean? And when I found out about it, I was like, okay. So they did a show, ECW did a show up in Buffalo, and Vic was there, and I walked in the locker room. This was the first time he had seen me since I had been hurt, and it was like almost a year. It was like a year. I walked in the locker room and punched him in the face. And when he fell back and got up, and I had my knife in my hand, I was getting ready to stab him. And Ray was like, "Oh, Jack, hold up." I told him, I said, sit down. I told Vic Grimes, I said, sit your ass down. I said, I'll gut you like a fish. I said, sit your fucking ass down. And he sat back down. Jack, I just want to explain, you ain't got nothing to say to me. You know what I mean?
Right.
So then, Paulie had to set up that every time when the Baldies would work and I hit the ring, Vic would powder and run. And Vic was like, he was scared to be in the ring with me. And I, just like I told Paulie, I said, Paulie, if I was going to do something to Vic, like get back at him, I said it wouldn't be in front of 5,000 witnesses. It wouldn't even be at a wrestling show. You know what I mean? I said, what Vic did was we got hurt because of his stupidity. But then, I said, I got hurt because of his stupidity. But then, when he started to take credit for it, like, look what I did to New Jack, that's what made me mad. And when they did that idea about that scalp, I said, yeah. He said, well, Rob Black was like, well, which one of y'all want to go off? We going to flip a coin? I said, flip a coin all day long.
Right.
I said, but Vic going off. I ain't probably getting thrown. I said, he's going off. And when we get up to the top, what Vic didn't know was I had stopped at the pawn shop and bought a stun gun. And I had it in my pocket. And if you go back and look at the tape, you can see that when we got up there, I pulled out my pocket and clicked a little button, and that little lightning bolt, that little electricity thing going back and forth, you could actually see it and you could hear it, and the fans were like, oh, so I stung Vic in the leg. And he went to the ground. Well, he went to the floor part, and then I shocked him about 5 or 6 times. And he was just like retarded. And he was like, Jack, wait, man, I can't feel all my body parts. I said, don't worry, you ain't gonna really need them. And when I picked him up, I didn't let him guide himself. I threw him. And at the very end of that match, I went in the ring and I slid up to him and I said, now we're even. And I went to the dressing room and got my money and went back to the hotel. And I was done.
Right.
So.
Wow. So obviously, something else. Obviously, a lot of people were talking recently. You know, I would say in the last year or so, your situation with Knobs. I don't know if you have any thoughts about that, but Knobs, obviously, you guys had a situation online. You did a great promo on him online where you just tore him up, basically verbally, like you always do. And has that been squashed between you and Knobs?
No. You know what? No, really is not. And I'm gonna tell you why. Okay. First of all, so the people that are not familiar with it we was at a show in Tampa. Largo, Florida, Gasoline Alley, and they run this show down there. It's coming like FGW. They run every Tuesday night. Plug. So they had a show, and I was in the locker room, and Knobs came in with his little ugly-ass wife and 2 little brothers or whoever they was, and they came in and sat down at the bar and started drinking like they were, and I was just like, whatever. And see, he started on me when he first came up, because it was me and these 2 other black guys that were at WCW developmental thing.
Right.
So when as soon as he walked up, he said, oh, what the hell is this? Martin Luther King week or something shit. And I was like, okay. So I didn't say anything. I let that go. So when we got in the dressing room, after some of the matches, he came in there and he was like, I just want to say something to you guys. He started giving this god-awful, pathetic speech about how great him and his partner was and all of the achievements that they've accomplished and you will be this. You could be like us one day if you stay in the business and keep your head in. And then he started talking down on some of the guys whose matches he's seen. So at the time, my ex, which was my girl at the time, she had just texted me something, and I was reading her text, and I started laughing. Well, it kind of went just at the end of something that he had just said.
Right. And
I was sitting down, and he was standing about 4 feet away from me. And when he said it, when he finished saying, I was looking at my phone, and I started laughing at what she had just texted me. Well, he looked at me, And he said, what the hell you laughing at, New Jack? You can't wrestle. You ain't never know how to wrestle a day in your life. Okay, now you got all these young guys sitting there. And he put me on the spot.
Right.
A spot where there was no negotiating. There was no nothing left for me to do but to do what I did. And I put my phone down, and I got up, and I walked up to him, and I hit him and knocked his ass out.
Wow.
And then I just started beating him. And I was trying to beat the breath out of him. And then when they was pulling me back and trying to help him get up, and he came up with this stumbling drunk and fell, and I tripped and fell backwards over a chair, and he was trying to go somewhere, and he fell and grabbed my leg. And when he grabbed my leg, I came back up again and kicked him in the top of the head, and then he went limp again.
Right.
So when they got him up and they walked him out of the dressing room, he came back in, and he was like, New Jack Paul, I thought we were friends. I said, I don't even know you. I said, I worked one show with you, and I've done 3 appearances for autographs or signing with you, conventions. That's all I know about you. I decided that god-awful, pathetic garbage can, that garbage y'all was calling hardcore wrestling that y'all was supposed to be known for, that softcore garbage that y'all did down in WCW. I said, I don't know you.
Right.
So he was like, well, check that up. Well, I mean, so he reached out to shake my hand, and any man knows that men shake hands right-handed.
Yes.
Well, I extended my left hand. And when he went to shake my hand, I swung and hit him again. And he hit the floor again. And then he get up and stumble out the door, and he comes back in again and starts cutting his promo, about like a wrestling promo. And I went over there and sit down in the chair. I said, are you serious? I said, you going to cut a wrestling promo on me now? And I told everybody that was standing, I said, y'all move out the way. I said, okay, no, you have a clear shot to come at me. And I said, I'll knock your ass out again. I said, I can do this all night. So I get this call from Bubba the Love Sponge radio station. And when I announced that I was going to go on his show, they was like, Jack, people started sending me messages. I mean, I was like, kind of excited. I had met Bubba one time, and I think the man, he was supposed to come and do a match, and down in St. Pete, and when he found out that I was doing the run-in on the match, all of a sudden he had car trouble. So he turned around and went back. He didn't come, right? So, and I hadn't gotten all about that's who he was, and somebody reminded me afterwards. Well, he asked me would I come down there to be on his show. And everybody kept sending me these messages because I kept posting it. Because I'm like, yeah, I'll be on the show. That's cool. He's working with Howard Stern. I'm like, just put my name out there more, whatever. Right. And then people started saying, Jack, be careful. I'm like, be careful for what? This shows you how much I don't pay attention to the business. He said, Bubba, Knobbs, and Hogan are butt buddies.
Right.
And Bubba is going to have you call in, and it's going to be him and Knobbs basically on the phone against you. And he said, Bubba is known for trying to embarrass people on the radio. He said, that's what he's going to do to you. So when I called Eric Sim, Eric said, Jack, Bubba is known for trying to talk down on the boys because he thinks he's a wrestler. Right. I'm like, okay. So I was living in Tampa, in Jacksonville at the time. And I thought about it. I said, well, I got to go to Largo tonight anyway to do that show. So instead of me waiting till that afternoon to drive down there, I got up at 3 o'clock in the morning and drove down to Tampa. So when they called me, they said, New Jack, we just want to call you. It's about 6:30, 6:45. They said to make sure that you're up and alert to do the show. I said, yeah, I'm up and alert, and I'm right around the corner at Waffle House. He said, Waffle House where? I said, down the street from y'all studio. I said, I want to come to the studio and do it live. I want to be there. So when I got there and then we started doing an interview, Bubba was trying to come across as a hard ass at first, and he says, what do I got to do stay at that time 16 times? And what he didn't know was I had this double, it's almost like a switchblade, but it was like real thick and like 8 inches long, and I had it in my side pocket. I had these sweatpants on, and it was a pocket on the leg of the pants. And I pulled a knife out and spun it around, and I said, I had a knife, something like this, and I just started staring. And Bubba was like, Jesus Christ, you can't think right here where you go? I said, yeah, it's like American Express. I don't leave home without it. And his whole attitude changed after that, he was just like, oh, shit, this nigga got a knife. And he was just like, what the? So he got so humble. And Eric Sims called me, he said, Jack, I have been listening to Bubba for years talk, okay? He said, and I never heard him so humble out of all the years and all the wrestlers he's had on his show until then. Okay, let's fast forward. A few weeks ago, I hadn't talked to Nas, hadn't seen him, hadn't heard from him, nothing. And if you got a cell phone or something, send me the number, and I'd be more than happy to send you this picture if you haven't already seen it, because I know fans got the picture. Nas sends me this picture with his pants pulled down, bent over, and he got his butt cheeks spread wide open. Well, dude, I'm going to make sure you get this picture, because when you see it after you throw up, he has the butthole the size of a coffee cup.
Oh, my God.
I swear to God, his asshole looks like somebody got their mouth open with no teeth. All right. Honest to God, I swear, and like I said, I'm going to make sure you get it, because and I still got it in my phone, and I refuse to take it out.
Did you
I sent it to Val. I sent it to Val Venus, and he was like, "What the fuck?" I said, "That's Knob." He said, "I know who it is." He said, "Dude, look at the size of his butthole."
Wow.
I said, "Yeah, he's had a lot of activity in that thing." And he started laughing, and then I sent it to Nelson, and and Mabel, whatever. And everybody that I knew that was in, I sent it to Tommy Dreamer. He didn't even reply. He was just like, what the, you know what I mean? And I mean, when you see it, if you hadn't already seen it, you will die. And I don't know what he thought I was going to do. Like, that was his way of saying, kiss my ass. Right. But what I did with it was, I took it and shared it on Facebook and stayed on there for a day. And then that next morning when I woke up, they had blocked me from using my account for 24 hours because of that picture.
Wow. But
people did grab it off of Facebook before they took it off. You know what I mean? But I'm going to send it to you so you can see what I'm talking about. And I mean, dude, people was like, that is not a normal ass. I mean, honest to God, you could stick your hand, you could take your fist and stick it in his butthole. And I don't know what he thought I was going to do with that picture. But I'm like, okay, was that your way of telling me to kiss your ass? That was not a good idea. Yeah. And I texted him back, and I said, do me a favor. I said, if you got any more pictures like that, would you please send them to me? I said, I'll be more than happy to share them with my friends. You know what I mean? And he did not come at me no more. But then he started, he started calling a friend of mine and, talking to her about, yeah, New Jack's always out on the road, all these different women and this and the other. And I'm just like, whatever. She's like, he's an idiot. I'm like, yeah, I know. So I don't even worry about it. You know what I mean? And I saw him at a signing about a month ago, and Eric Sims had hired all these security guys to be around me. And I said, I don't need security. He said, well, I didn't hire him for you. He said, I hired him for him.
Right.
He said, I hired him just in case you decide to run over there so they'll grab your way. So when we was getting ready to leave, they was on the other side of the convention hall, and I said, I want to walk right by his table. And Eric said, Jack, we can go out the door here. I said, no, I want to walk right by his table. So I walked past the table, and he's like, Jack, brother, we all right? I said, fuck you, man. I said, you're fucking pathetic. I said, and you stupid. And I kept walking, you know what I mean? And I said, once again, I'm right over here. You know what I mean? So then after that, when he sent me the picture, and like I said, the message was, kiss my ass. But, I took it and made him famous all over again. So I took it up on Facebook, and it stayed there for like a whole day.
So obviously it backfired on him. He wasn't thinking that you were going to use it like that.
Yeah, and you know what? And when I got back into my account and I explained to the 5,000 or so people that was on my account, right. I said I got blocked off of my account for sharing that picture with y'all that Brian Knob sent me. I said, well, honestly, it was worth every minute of me not being on here for y'all to see what I had to look at on my phone. Because I swear to God, when I opened that picture up, I almost dropped my phone. I was like, that is not that is not possible for somebody. I don't care how much you weigh. It's not possible for your butthole to be as big as his was. Not his big fat ass, but his butthole alone. Dude, I was waiting on a midget to just come out of it, just stick his head out, just pop out, just anything. I mean, it is like huge. And I was just like, why would he send me there? You know what I mean? Because, I mean, come on. And honestly, I have been trying to find sites where I could just send it to people and let them put it up where they wouldn't take their site down. I swear to God, because I'm like, what would make you be so stupid as to send me, of all people,
right,
a picture of your asshole? I mean, dude, seriously, honest to God, if you got a cell phone, it will fit in his butthole. And everybody just started cracking jokes about him, and all these Hogan jokes and Bischoff jokes, and I mean, they were just like, no wonder him and Hogan so close and so tight. You know what I mean? Right. Look at the size of his asshole. I mean, dude, honest to God, you did not be born. God did not give him that asshole. He gave himself or somebody else that asshole, because it is larger than life.
Well, obviously, that's an asshole that comes from getting fucked a lot, I'm assuming. So obviously, like you mentioned before, you weren't aware about Bubba being racist either, right? I mean, you weren't, because Bubba's kind of racist. I mean, he definitely like.
Oh no, I've been knowing that. I was following this white girl in Philly. I won't mention her name. Carissa. And Bubba went to her one day and he said, "Oh, so you down with the Browns?"
Wow.
And she came back and told me that. And he was just like, "No, Jack, I didn't mean it that way." So imagine what him and so many other millions and millions of people walking around the planet was thinking when they saw me and Terry Reynolds as an item. Can you imagine how many faces? I think that first week the suicide rate went up. It tripled because little white guy that had her poster on the wall was just jumping off of bridges. They was like, it is not possible that New Jack is hitting that. Well, for a year and a half, yes, I did.
Nice.
Happily.
Nice.
You know what I mean? And everybody was like mad. And when we broke up, they was just like, "Oh my God, and this, that, and the other, and da da da." I mean, it was a big news thing on in the sheets and all kind of stuff went on. But honestly, bro, I kept her around not because I was in love with her, because I wasn't. It was just I knew this was like in your face kind of thing. And hi. Look what I got, and you don't. And
did you catch a lot of heat from that?
It was.
Did you catch a lot of heat from the boys at all about that, about Terry?
No, I'm gonna tell you something. And I know we people are probably saying like, "Oh God, it's been almost a year. He's still talking about her." Yeah, because I can. It wasn't the heat. And the first time when I saw D-Lo that night, D-Lo came up to me. "I'm sorry, D-Lo, but this is what, hey, brother, welcome to the business." He said, "Jack, you got any pictures?" I said, "Pictures of who?" He said, "Terry." I said, "Yeah, I got a phone full of them. Why?" He said, "Can I see them?" So I went in my pocket and pulled my phone. I said, "Yeah." I said, "Now, you take your phone out and show me some butt-naked pictures of your wife, and we'll switch phones." And he was like, "I can't do that." I said, "Well, neither can I." And most of the guys in the business were like, "Dude, I wouldn't have thought that in a million years." I said, "Bro, I got game."
Yeah, it was.
Besides having
it was all
fucking thing hanging.
Yeah,
of course it was. Of course. And I mean, nobody really wanted to touch on it. They was like, "Oh man, I don't want to talk about that because she's the son of she was married to Goldust and
right.
Dusty Rhodes and all this and the Reynolds name, and if you say something about her, and then you never go to WWE." Well, you know what? I had already crossed that bridge. Well, I knew I wasn't going back, and ain't nobody in this business ever did shit for me. So I was like, I'm gonna talk about her like the dog that she really is. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's exactly what I did, and everybody got mad about it.
Right.
And I mean, they were pissed off at me. I'm like, how you going to get pissed off at me when I'm laying in the bed with this woman for a year and a half, and then I find out the night I'm leaving and she got genital herpes? You going to get mad at me for that?
Right.
Like, how am I the bad guy? Please tell me, how am I the bad guy for telling the world that she was infected with that crap? How am I the bad guy? Oh, no, I told you. Here comes another bomb. Lisa, what'd I tell you? Boom! I told you. Same thing. And I mean, it's what I couldn't understand. How could you get mad at me for exposing her? What did I do wrong? You know what I mean? Other than leave her ass. Right. Because, you know, and then I called Dustin and I said, why didn't you tell somebody she had herpes? You knew it. And he was like, well, I could have lost my job. I said, oh, your job is more concerned, is more important than somebody's life or having to live with a disease the rest of their life that they can't get rid of?
Right.
You know what I mean?
Exactly.
And I was having to go back and forth to the doctors and just keep getting blood tested. They said, well, at this stage in your life, you don't have it. And my doctor kind of made a little ha-ha out of it. She said, but if you happen to wake up one morning and your dick looking like the head of cauliflower, then that means you got it.
Oh, my God.
You know, so that was basically, I was done. And, you know, and I kept telling her, I said, you don't want to mess with me like the way you're messing with me, you know. And she was like, well, if you want, you know, I'll just go make a public announcement. I said, Terry, I want you to understand something. I do not worship the ground you walk on.
Right.
Okay? I said, I don't. I said, if you want a handyman, a boy to cut your grass and wash your car, I said, then I think you should go and find one. I said, but you don't have one right now.
Right.
You know what I mean? And I said, and you know, her thing and Tammy, their little thing is they like them 19 and younger. I said, well, I guess I kind of fit in that category because my last name is Young. So maybe that's what you're looking at, you know. And she would be like, I've never had anybody do it to me the way that you do it. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, my God, I feel it in my throat. I'm like, that's what you're supposed to feel.
Right.
You know? I said, that's exactly the way it's supposed to be, coming out your mouth looking like a turtle shell. I mean, that's how it's supposed to be. You know? And I mean, like I said, bro, and people talk about, well, how could you go out and say that and she got kids? I said, okay, so I guess my 2 kids don't count.
Right, right.
So you concerned about her little daughter, but my 2 kids don't count. Wrong.
Well, didn't she?
You know,
didn't she put it online first, like for everybody to know about it? I mean, wasn't she the one that started kind of like putting it publicly, or how did that come about? Like
no, that came about when me and Eric Sims was driving to a signing, and as a joke, and I was just playing around. I cut this promo when we riding down the turnpike or whatever in Jersey, and I said, now I want you to think it and listen to what I'm getting ready to say.
Yeah.
I said, we're doing a show tonight as a fundraiser for children, child benefit, you know,
right.
at a Fires Hall. Okay, so you know it's going to be a lot of kids there, a lot of mothers and fathers and whatever. I said, and I'm on my way there now with, you know, my agent, Eric Sims, and my girl in the back at the time, you know, and Cubanita, and I said, and I have pictures, merchandise to sell, this, that, and the other, yada, yada, yada. And I said, oh, and I might be selling some butt-naked pictures too. And I started laughing, and I put it on Facebook. Well, in a couple of hours, this attorney called, and Eric didn't recognize the number, so he went back and listened to the message. He didn't answer his phone. He went back and listened to the message, and he was like, Jack, Terry Reynolds got an attorney. And I said, so? He said, well, the guy's threatening to sue if you sell any pictures of her. I said, I said, Eric, I said, you know I was kidding when I said that. He said, I know you don't have any pictures. So she went and hired an attorney. Well, I get this email from this news reporter, and she said, Mr. Young, this is such and such a news reporter from the Sentinel in Orlando, and she says, you're being sued by Terry Reynolds for selling some pictures or trying to sell some pictures. So we get to court and find out that the attorney she had hired was Morgan & Morgan. They were representing her pro bono. Well, for those of you that don't know, that means for free.
Right.
Okay, so she had paid them jack, but she promised them some money. Okay, so they come in like they were big shots, and I had this attorney, I forgot his name now, but he came in there and ripped her ass apart. Okay, And he told her attorney, and I told him, I said, I had pictures on my phone. I said, but understand something. This woman has herpes. Do you really think I want to look at that shit in my phone? I said, I deleted all the pictures. I said, I don't have them no more. I said, I don't have them.
Right.
I said, who wants to see some pictures of somebody without their makeup and without their veneer teeth in and is damn near 50 years old? Who in the hell want to see that?
Right.
But I had to look at it every night, you know what I mean? And I felt like I was looking at something from the fucking Creep Show. You know? So I'm sitting there and I used to always tell her, I said, you got society fooled. I said, you got the whole industry fooled. Because they thinking you is this Miss Wholesome, Miss Goody Two-Shoes. And I said, you are the fucking devil. You know?
Yeah.
I said, you are Satan. You're the devil. Okay? And she was like, if you publish all this, it's going to really, it's going to ruin my career. I said, well, consider it ruined, but she drew first blood because she tried to sneak into the town that I was living in, and I didn't even get served with any papers, and if I hadn't showed up for that appearance, then they would have automatically been granted the lawsuit, and I would have had to pay this stuff. All right?
Right.
But what she didn't know was that me and my attorney, we discussed it. He said, do you want me to say something on the record, or do you want me not to say it? And I said, no, at this point, I said, I don't care. I said, say it. So he says, well, Your Honor, we moved to whatever, and we all agree, but, my client right now is having to go to the doctor because Mrs. Reynolds she has genital herpes, and he's concerned about this, so we want a countersuit, all right? And then he said, along with the countersuit, he said, she's also going to be prosecuted for attempted battery. And in the state of Florida, if you knowingly have an STD and you have sex with somebody, then that's like attempted assault. I'm like, oh, she committed assault with her pussy. I'm like, oh boy, and so I was just like, and he was like, do you want to go through with it? I said, you tell them to go away,
right, and
leave me the fuck alone, or it's gonna get ugly, all right? Because she really thought she had the upper hand on me. And then
she didn't know who she
was. Dude, like I said, look, I did a shoot DVD about my mama. Do you think I give a flying fuck about her? I can't stand my mama. So do you think if I talk about my own mama, do you think I'm gonna hold my tongue on that girl? Come on.
Wow.
Come on now. And then she goes and it's on the internet somewhere. She gets this tattoo put on the back of her neck, right? And if you look at it in my profile picture, there's a tattoo on my chest.
Right.
And she called it the Tree of Life. But what it actually was is a 100% shoot. She had taken a penis of, I'll say this in the terms where most white people understand it, my cock. She had taken a picture of it, and the vein pattern that was on it, she was like, I was so in love with your vein pattern on your cock. She says, I got it tattooed on the back of my neck.
Wow.
And she pulled up her hair, and on the back of my neck is the vein pattern of my dick. Well, that's the same tattoo I went and got and put on my chest. But then she added some leaves to it and called it the Tree of Life.
Wow.
Now, mind you, the guy at the tattoo shop had to take that picture and trace that and put it on my chest. He said, well, if I mess up, you can just pull your dick out and I can look at it and tattoo it. And we started laughing. But that's what's on the back of her neck, the vein pattern on my dick. So, bro, go figure.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean?
Exactly.
I mean, come on. And like I said, it was guys sending me messages. Like, Jack, I slept with her too.
Wow.
Now, I ain't gonna put none of their names out there because I wouldn't do them like that. And then there was one guy, he said, Jack, I slept with her too. And this other guy, Jack, I slept with her too. I said, well, I advise all y'all to go and do what I did and get a damn test. Because I went there and got tested for HIV, hepatitis, and herpes. You know what I mean? I'm like, I don't want you to just clear the whole slate with me. I want to make sure I'm going to be alive this time next year, you know. So she never came out and, okay, this is the thing, because she was trying to talk about defamation of character. I'm like, please, once you become a public figure, your ass is out, you're good for the picking.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's like open season, you know what I'm saying? So they were like, yeah, well, we're not going to rule on that because, you know, you are a public figure. So then I sent her attorney, I started emailing him all that garbage that she did in WWE. And I said, look, right here where she's almost butt naked. Look right here where she's been stripped down nothing but a thong. And I'm saying, she talking about some pictures that I don't even have?
Right.
I said, she's that desperate for money? You know, with her house in foreclosure and been there for 3 years. I said, she's trying to come at me for talking about her. I said, it ain't like I made this shit up. I said, everything I'm saying about her was true.
Right.
And that's why I couldn't understand. I said, how can people get mad at me other than just visualizing me hitting that ass? How could you get mad at me for exposing somebody that had been around this business for so long and was sleeping with so many different people? That ain't defamation of character because I can prove, and I had contacted at least 5 people that said they would come to court as a witness and say they had sex with her unprotected.
Right.
How the hell did I become the bad guy?
And that was pretty much common knowledge, right? That was pretty much common knowledge. I mean, a lot of people knew that.
Well, no. A lot of people didn't know she had it.
No, I'm saying about the sleeping.
Didn't nobody know she?
No, I'm saying about the
Right. Well, yeah. I mean, yeah. Everybody. But see, it was always okay. We slept together, but shh, don't tell nobody.
Right.
You know, and she would do that kind of crap, but she would talk about Tammy like a dog. You know what I mean? But then when Tammy called her, she's like, "Oh, hey, girl, how you doing?" And she ain't talking about she's a fucking whore. And she sleeps with everybody in every town that she goes to, and Tammy ain't shit. He's talking about Missy High like a dog. And I said, you know, it's amazing how you can sit here and talk about people the way you do. Right. And I said, look at you. You know, I said, look at you. And I said, the thing is, people know that your family, by way of marriage, is still in the business. That's why I want nobody to come out and say nothing. I said, well, bitch, you done fucked the wrong, not fuck with, but fuck the wrong nigga this time.
Right.
You know, so I wasn't going to keep it a secret. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, this day, bro, if I just happen to see or hear her name, it makes my stomach turn.
Right.
You know, because she, and then like I said, even Dustin, he's a joke because he knew it. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, shh, don't say nothing. I said, what you mean, she don't say nothing? No, she ain't getting away with that like that, not with me. And like I said, it's been, next month will be a year. And I'm still, and I was just telling a friend of mine, I said, every so many months, I'll start back firing on her ass because of what she put me through when I was with her.
Right. And
I have absolutely.
And once again, it was such a huge story. I mean, it was, everybody was talking about it. I mean, it was all over the place. And it was very, very huge story.
You know, and see, the thing about it was, like I said, see, and this is when you know truth is truth, facts are facts. If somebody came out and said that I had a disease,
right,
I'm going to fight back and prove that I don't have it.
Exactly.
Well, this is where we was and how it all just kind of went away. When my attorney said, Your Honor, if this lawsuit is continued, we are going to recommend that she go and get tested and bring her papers back to court and present them to the judge, bring the test results back to court. And that's when they went into a huddle. And when they broke the huddle, they were like, we'll just let it go. Let it go.
Right.
Let it go. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I'll stand on any ground and say it because she know that what I'm saying is true. You know what I mean? Because see, if defamation of character, that would have been, he can't say that on me because I can prove it. Well, I was like, okay, if I'm lying, go get your test like I did and present it to the court, present it to the state of Florida so they can determine that you are infected. And I'm not telling a lie.
Right.
And with all of that, I still came out to be the bad guy, to these idiotic, dumbass fans that she got so brainwashed and thinking that she is just Miss Goody Two-Shoes and her shit don't stink. Well, that don't fly with me.
Right. So it was, so basically...
So that's why, and I know you probably wanted to ask me about it, but like, well, should we ask him about it? You damn right, you can ask him about it. If anybody else asks him about it, I'll tell them the same thing. I put her over when it was time to put her over, and I put her under when it was time to put her under. When it was time to throw her up under the bus, I picked her up with two hands and threw her ass up under there.
Right. No, obviously, so
after what she did to me.
So basically, the fans were the ones making you out to be the bad guy? That's what the fans were?
I mean, dude,
it doesn't seem like
I can't believe New Jack would go public and tell something like that. He wasn't thinking about Dakota. You know what I mean? How could he do something like that? I said, what you mean? I wasn't thinking about her daughter.
Right.
I said, she should have told her daughter. This is what could happen when you screw somebody that you don't know without a condom. You know what I mean?
Right.
See, I said, what about her? I said, what about my kids? They had to read the same thing everybody else read. But people, they turn heel on me.
Right.
First of all, because she gets fucked by a nigga. Then second of all, it was me.
Right.
And then I exposed her ass. And what about her family? Oh, son, your family's put in the back seat at that point.
Right.
You know, it's like no holds barred at that point. And she can talk about, well, if I'll make a public announcement. I said, you better beat me to the punch. But see, she was threatening to do it, so I wouldn't do it. But shit, the first chance I got, I did it. Because I told her, the reason we ended up in court was because of her. It wasn't because of me.
Right, right.
Because she was asking for money when she walked in the door. Well, if he give me $20,000, I'll drop this lawsuit. I said, she got to be nuts.
Wow. Yeah.
You know, and again, she had an attorney with pro bono. She ain't paid nothing. You know, but she was posting on her a little Facebook, you know, I have attorneys on standby, so if this don't stop, you know, my attorneys are going to take action. You ain't even paid no attorney.
Right. I don't know how you come out to be the bad guy, because, I mean, if she's the one that had the disease and you could have contracted that.
She still got it. It ain't she had it. She still got it. It went nowhere.
That's what I mean. Like, I don't.
You know, but like I said, bro, people were mad at me. They were like, how could you do that to her in Little Dakota? I'm like, what the fuck you mean? How could I do this to her? I said, how could that bitch attempt 500 or 600 times to do it to me?
Right, exactly. That's very confusing. I don't get that at all.
Because I came out here and told y'all that this bitch is nasty. How am I the bad guy? Man, if I would have made up some shit about her, that would have been one thing.
Right, right.
But what I said about it was true. I didn't make that up. You know, and that whole family wanted to just kayfabe it. It'll go away, and no, it ain't gonna be that. It ain't gonna be that easy.
Exactly.
You know, it ain't gonna be that easy, because I mean, like I said, I mean, it was the first time I met her, and this is something somebody brought to my attention. This one dude was like, dude, I would have paid millions of dollars to be with her.
Right.
And he said, I would have offered up my house and my car. He said, and you lured her in with a handful of Percocet. He said, what the fuck?
Wow.
That's how the conversation started. That's how we got introduced. I gave her some Percocet at a show. And I didn't even realize, I didn't know who she was. I was actually giving them to somebody else, and they shared them with her.
Right.
I didn't know who she was. And then she hit me up on Facebook and said, thanks for the treats. I said, what treats? She said, the little treats you gave such and such. I said, oh. She said, we was buying them together. I said, oh, okay, you're welcome. And then from there, we started the conversation. And 2 weeks later, I was up in that ass deep.
Right.
And that's all it took was a handful of Percocet.
So you weren't aware of who she was?
Dude, I swear to God, when she told me who she was, I said, Terry Reynolds. I said, from where? And she thought I was playing. And see, this is even the funny part, because she smokes cigars, right? She said, will you bring me a pack of cigars when you come? And boy, you gotta understand something. I mean, ain't too many niggas smoke cigars. Right. So I stopped at 7-Eleven and bought a box of Black & Mild. And I took those to her, and she thought I was like ripping it right. Okay, what are real cigars at? I said, these are cigars.
Wow.
And she was like, No. The ones I smoke cost about $20 or $30 a piece. Yeah. I said, well, we need to go get in the car and find them for you then, because if I'm smoking, I don't smoke weed. I said, but the only cigars I'm familiar with is these $3 pack of 4 Black & Milds. I said, that shit you talking about, I said, that's a pair of shoes. I said, I ain't going to buy that.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's the kind of stuff we buy, to roll it up. You know what I mean?
Right, that's what I'm saying. So, I mean, I didn't know nothing about cigars. I mean, and then she tried to, wanted me to smoke with her, and I was like, I said, that taste is in my mouth, and we smoked 2 days ago. I said, I don't want this shit no more.
Yeah, it's pretty nasty.
But I mean, like I said, that was her thing. So I'm like, you here, you can have it, you do it. And then my pills popped up missing one night. Right. Percocet popped up missing. And I'm like, hey, did you see my Percocet? She's like, oh my God, babe, you should have seen you last night. Oh my God, you were drooling, you were foaming at the mouth. I thought you was gonna kill me, and the little one, and I just took them and flushed them down the toilet. And I was like, oh shit, for real?
Wow.
And she was like, yes, oh my God. I said, well, where's the bottle? She said, I don't know, I was just so upset. I put it somewhere. I'll find it and give it to you. And I said, because I need to call the doctor so I can get some more. And we couldn't find a bottle. And that airplane flew right over my head.
Wow.
I didn't see it. So then the second time, she tried to pull that stuff from me again. And this time, my Percocet and my Xanax came up missing. Now see, by me cracking my skull, it threw me off. My sleeping pattern got thrown right off.
Right.
All right. So I have to take Xanax now. I've been on Xanax now for 10 years, over 12 years. All right. And it's like I tried to go cold turkey and not take them, and I started hallucinating. So I have to take Xanax. So she took my Perc and my Xanax. So the third time, I was pretending like I was peeled up, and I wasn't. And she took them out my bag again. And that morning when I woke up, I said, Terry, what my Percocet said? She said, I don't know. I said, they was in my bag. She says, babe, last night you scared me so bad. I had them, and I put them somewhere, but just let me think where I put them. I said, no, last night I wasn't peeled up.
Right.
Babe, yes, you. I said, no, the fuck wasn't. I said, because I didn't even take a pill last night. Well, you was stumbling around the house. I said, it's like wrestling. It was called acting. I said, I was not peeled up last. I didn't even have a pill last night.
Right.
And then when I went out to the garbage can, when she had went to work, she was working for a plumbing company as a salesman, and she was like, please don't tell anybody that I'm working for this plumbing company, because it would just really make me look bad. I said, oh, as bad as your house being in foreclosure? Okay, whatever. So I went out to the garbage can, and I dumped all the trash out in the driveway, and there were 2 of my pill bottles. I said, I wonder how they got in the trash can. And when I brought them back in the house, I set them on the counter.
Right, right.
And when she got off work, she came in there and walked right past him and looked at him and turned like, hi, babe, I'm home. like she didn't even see him.
Yeah.
And I told her, I said, you are amazing. I said, you are amazing how you can do so much dirt and try to cover it up with a smile, thinking that it's okay for you to be the person that you are. And I told her, I said, you know what, the person that I see you being is not what these dumbass marks see. I said, I see you from the core. I said, it's not with no makeup on. I said, I'm looking deep down in your soul, and I see how much ugliness and spitefulness you got in your heart. You know what I mean? I said, but nobody would ever believe me.
Right. Because
you get them so brainwashed, because all they see is your 2 silicone titties. That's all they see. And that fake smile you get. I said, they don't see nothing else but that. And they just, you couldn't imagine her doing some of the stuff that she did with me. You couldn't imagine it.
Right.
And I told her, I said, I'm going to go out there every chance I get to put another nail in your coffin. I'm going to do it.
Yeah,
and all I'm doing is telling you the truth.
Yeah, and actually, ever since that all happened, we haven't heard from her in a long time, obviously. So obviously,
no, she did a signing. She did a signing. Did you remember I was up there last year? She did a signing at some hotel in Philly by the airport, and
wow.
She came in there. Somebody told me she walked in with all these security guys around her, like, you know, she heard I was in Philly and they hired these security people to protect her. And then she screwed some of the guy, which I'm going to say his name, little dude named Khalid or something like that. He works for High Spots. And then when I got in touch with him, I said, was you just with Terry Reynolds last week? And he's like, New Jack, bro, let me explain. I said, no. I said, we're not together anymore. I said, I don't know where you've been. I said, but did she tell you that she had herpes? And he said, what? I said, well, I'll tell you what. I said, when you want to give me, like, all your information and your address, I said, and if I decide to sue her, I said, I'm going to contact you to come in court as a witness to say that she knowingly has herpes and didn't tell you.
Hey, because you're supposed to do that, right? You're supposed to tell the
people. And he started crying. He was on the phone crying.
Wow.
And about an hour later, I get a text with all his information on it. And then he sent me an email back about a month after that and said he got tested and he was negative. Okay. And I mean, dude, I'm just like, and I don't know why they were like, people would just give me updates. You know, every time when she came out, the first thing I woke up to that Sunday morning, that she had sex with this guy that worked at High Spots. I'm like, I don't give a fuck who she fucking on. I'm fucking somebody else than myself anyway. I don't care.
Right.
You know? And everything. He's like, well, I fucked with that night like 3 or 4 times. I'm like, well, yeah, that sounds like her. You know? But
right.
She didn't tell it. And see, and that's why for her to talk about Tammy, even though me and Tammy, I ain't gonna say I don't like her no more. It's just that we don't talk no more because she did some stupid shit, and she called me one day. Even though she talked about Tammy like a dog and talked about Missy, I said she is beneath Tammy and Missy with all of the underhanded backsliding shit that she did with me and with Dustin. Because I went on the internet and looked up this Howard Stern interview that Dustin did, and he was like, she was screwing some attorney when, not attorney, it was a dentist. She was screwing some dentist up in Nashville. Yeah. Well, that was real funny because about every 3 months, she would chip one of her veneers, she claimed, in the back. And she would come in there with this little piece of tooth until I found out later that she had that little piece of tooth stored somewhere in a plastic bag. So about every 2 or 3 months, she would fly to Nashville and stay up there for the weekend. Well, the dentist guy would pay for her hotel and would fix her mouth for free. And she'd come back home. And after that happened twice, then I found out that she was sleeping with the guy. And I told her, I said, do you really think I'm that dumb?
Right.
I said, somebody sent me that little link to Howard Stern. I saw what Dustin, I heard what he said about you. I said, then I put it all together. Okay? I said, do you really think I'm that stupid? Well, he used to work with the WWE, and he was on the road with us on WWF, and he fixed our mouth. I said, I'm sure he did fix your mouth. Not in a dental way, but I'm sure he did fix your mouth. I said, but, and it's funny, that same little piece of tooth you keep bringing in here showing me, that's like the same piece from last time.
Yeah, a lot of oral.
You know, I said, can't you come up with something new?
A lot of oral surgery was going on, I guess.
Yeah. You were absolutely right. A lot of oral surgery was really happening. You know, and I was like, man, come on, man. You know what I mean? I mean, dude, it was so much mess with that girl, man. I was just like, man, look, I'm done.
Was that one of the best parts about you being in ECW and wrestling? Was the women? Was that one of the best? Was that one of the benefits of being like one of the stars?
The women, you talking about that work with us or fans?
No, just fans, women all over, you know, always.
Well, you know what? Because when I became known, I was a heel. So then too many people wanted to be around me down in Smoky Mountain because they really did believe there was a Santa Claus. So they wasn't trying to run after me. But then when I came up to ECW, and people kept saying, man, there's going to be rats at the hotel. And I was like, I don't want to stay in the hotel with rats. I was thinking a rat.
Right.
Like the eat cheese with 4 eggs.
Yeah, yeah.
And I really didn't know what they were talking about until it was the Travelodge. And then all these girls were just like all over everybody. And I walked in like, oh, my. And I was like, uh-oh. So the attention we was getting was fun.
Yeah, yes.
Along with head and sex and everything else. Oh, it was fun.
Right.
And then it got old, you know. And then I got in a relationship and it got old. And then I just stepped out of the box and looked back and I'm like, one night I'm sitting in the room snorting coke.
Wow. Back
when I was doing it. And yeah, it's something about that chemical. It's like they should use it instead of a lie detector test. They should make you do a line of coke because coke will make you tell the truth even when you try not to.
Right.
And I was there over in the corner just snorting like all night. And all these people came in my room. And I looked at them and I said, after about my third or fourth line, I said, you know what? I said, if I was Joe Blow that worked down the street at Burger King, y'all wouldn't be in here.
Right.
I said, but because I'm out there in that ring, that's why y'all in here. So one of my buddies was like, Jack, man, come on, man, you ruining the party. I said, fuck that. I said, oh, y'all get out my room. And I made everybody leave, and I slammed the door. Wasn't nobody up but me and this one bitch and my cocaine, and that was a wrap.
Right.
You know, and you would just be surprised as to how many times I had been with a white girl that I was her first nigga that she had fucked ever. Right. It just amazed me. I'm just like, you ever slept with a black guy? A black guy? She said, no. I said, well, why did you pick me? She says, well, New Jack, I'm just so, just because you wrestle and you just, oh my God, I just love you. And I was like, oh shit, is that easy? So for a long time, that was just part of the game. And then when I got tired of it, right. And then I stopped, you know. And I think what really drove me to pulling away from when I got hurt. Right. And nobody came to see me. Nobody came. And I always give this girl credit, even though she is not number one on my list anymore. But this girl named Joyce that stays near Allentown, she was the only person out of everybody that wrestled with me or that knew me. She drove from near Allentown, Phoenixville, all the way down to Atlanta just to stay with me for about a week to see how I was doing.
Oh, wow.
Now, we don't speak to this day because of some stupid shit, but she was the only one, and I never take that back. I give her credit where it's due. She was the only one that came to see me when I was laid up and was not right. You know what I mean? Right. And when I came back after that, I had a whole new look at people then. Then I went to going from my car to the locker room, back to my car, back to the hotel by myself, to the airport, gone. Right. You know what I mean?
So
then I realized. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, when you were in ECW and everybody was going to, or getting offered contracts to go to WCW, were you one of the guys that they offered a contract to leave ECW to go to WCW?
Yeah, I was supposed to go, me and Mustafa had offered a deal to go to WCW when they was bringing in Master P.
Right.
Oh, and okay. Kevin Nash had something to do with, you know, who came and who went on creative, whatever. And he shot me down. Like as soon as my name came, he was like, oh no, New Jack is a fucking problem. He stabbed somebody one time. Okay, well check this out. That same angle, that same stabbing that I did, right? They did it with John Cena and the little Puerto Rican dude, Carlos Colon's son. Yeah, they did it with them, but yeah, they did it with them. If you remember back, that's when Cena was making that movie, so they had to take him off the TV for a little while. Right. But what they did was they made it seem like he had been stabbed by somebody, and they actually considered using me, but then people were like, oh, fuck that, he did it for real. So, and I talked to Thomas Dreamer, and then I talked to Paulie, and they both told me, they said, it was true. We stole it right from what you really did. Right. Because he got stabbed like 9 or 10 times. I stabbed the guy, I think it was like 16 or 9 or some shit. But, you know, and that's what I came from. When I was offered to go to WCW, Nash stuck his hands in it, and they was like, nope, we can't use him. And it was funny, I saw Nash at a convention one night. One day it was me and Terry, and I ran up behind Nash and playfully grabbed him around his neck like I was choking him. And he said, New Jack? I said, what's up, buddy? He's like, oh, man. He said, God, it's been a long time. How you been? I said, yeah, it has been a long time. I said, actually, we have never fucking met.
Wow.
I said, but you've said a lot of good things about me, and you kept me from getting a job. And I said, and with all of that being done and said, would you do me a favor and take a couple of pictures with me? I said, I'd love to have a picture standing beside the man that kept millions of dollars out of my pocket.
Right.
He said, Jack, that's not how it went. Well, we took a picture together, and I put up under it as the caption, my BFF, and I put it on my Facebook profile for like a month.
Oh, that's awesome.
Okay.
And were you disappointed when ECW closed? When, in 2001 when it was over. WCW.
No, I was ready. You know what? Well, you know what? I quit in December 2000 because I was already seeing that the company was going under, and nobody else saw it.
Oh.
And I said, do y'all not see the writing on the wall? And I went up to Queens and did to get my money. And Paulie gave me some of my money, but not all of what he owed me. And that night I was like, dude, I'm done. Right. And I said, you need to be honest and tell these boys what's getting ready to happen. He's like, hey, I'm going out to L.A. for a few weeks, and we got deals out there, and we're going to come back on TV strong. Well, what he was actually doing at that time, he was going out there to do that movie, that part he had, and Rollerball.
Right, right.
That's why he went out to L.A. It had nothing. He had already just got rid of the company to Vince, but they had a length of a certain period of time when he would officially turn it over to Vince. So, but I knew it because I'm like, I said, dude, he's not booking angles. He's just booking matches. It's just, right. He's just throwing anybody in there with anybody. It didn't matter who did what. I said, do y'all not see it? And I quit. I was like, I'm done.
Right.
And then it was like, well, if anybody goes out and try to work any other Fed, and if you try to come to WWE, he was like, I'm going to make sure you don't get a job. So a lot of the boys sit home for months and wouldn't even go do indies.
Right.
And then when they did get a job, they got a low-end contract and then went on TV and got squashed. Well, I went out to XPW by then. I was like, the hell with them. So, I mean, I was only going out there like once a month. But, I mean, they paid me pretty good. And Kevin Kleinrock and them took care of me and everything. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And Kevin's a part of, this Extreme Reunion, this Extreme Rising thing.
Yes.
I mean, I done talked about everything else except that show. We are doing a show in Philly.
That's right.
Saturday at the National Guard Armory in Northeast Philly. And some of the guys will be there from ECW, from the original, and then we got like a lot of new guys coming in also. You know what I mean? And
he's the one that
the first show we didn't go over too good, so we're gonna try to come back and redeem ourselves.
Right. Yeah. Everybody's excited about it. Of course, like I said, we had Shane on Monday. Really talk really good about this show. Anybody that's listening, go to extremereunion.net to find out the ticket information. I recommend that you strongly go to tomorrow and Saturday. Of course, Saturday is where New Jack will be at in Philly. You don't want to miss that.
Yeah.
Jack, thank you.
I'll be in
I'm sorry. Yes.
I'll be in Philly, but I ain't doing New York.
It's a real shame, though. But thank you so much for doing this show. You're more than welcome to come back, of course, on Roundtable Wrestling Radio.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, man. I mean, it has been a blast. We look forward to seeing you, of course, a part of this show on Saturday in Philly, man. Thank you so much, man. It's been awesome having you on the show.
Hey, thank you, man. Thank you, and I appreciate it. And thanks, Shane W. for trying to bring this thing back to life. You know what I mean? We're doing what we can.
Definitely, man.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Have a good one.
All right, bro.